Yes.
I think if you look at this just on the surface, it's pretty easy to see where this is going and where it's coming from. This is about economics. And the thing that's really scary is, and I'm sure I've watched the news about this agency out that's in Utah that has the capability of 5 zettabytes of information. That equates to 100,000 bytes of information on every human on the planet. And that's operational. And every time they create one of these little devices, you are automatically now linked into that database. So what that allows them to do is every single thing in your life is now going through a government agency computer that they can tell everything you're doing, your trends, your buying. And this is what I'm saying. This to me appears to be purely economics. And when you've got people like Bill Gates, he just mentioned, and other individuals.
Well, Bill Gates is the main funder on this.
Yeah,
he's going to make big money on it.
Well, that's what I said. It's economically driven.
The one who's developing all the textbooks and the apps that are going to be used for the education. Pearson was the other one. There is a.
And Pearson was the one who actually had a bad test for us one year when their data wasn't accurate.
There's a YouTube video. It's called Bad ASS Teachers. But it's a group, it's a Facebook page. They just started like months ago. And this is what the teachers are having to say about Common Core. We got 25,000 of them. You go into this Facebook group and it's unbelievable. The teachers are like absolutely dissing because they're not allowed to teach anymore. You know, they're talking about all these things and they know that it's just like what you said. I mean, or somebody said it. Why? You tell me 15 years from now, are we still going to need a teacher?
They won't be teachers, they'll be monitors.
Well, that's what, you know, and what they say with Common Core, that the sales point is well, there's less standards. And with the less standards, that allows you to expand more on each one. It's theoretically what they were going to do. But you know, with the reading side of it, they have them reading less history and less novels, and making more of a diversity. So you have short stories that are involved. You have magazines, all kinds of other things. And I don't believe it goes into the depth that we would normally get. It's very conservative.
For curriculum, an example.
If I may, Stan, does anybody know what a zettabyte is? If you took a 4G cell phone and you stacked them flat on the Earth, it would reach the International Space Station. That's 1 zettabyte. So it just kind of puts it in perspective of the kind of capability that this system has. It started out as a good thing to monitor people coming into this country that want to do America harm under George Bush. What happened, it's now turned into be a very sinister thing where they can monitor every facet of your life and your children's life and your family's life to where they can manipulate you any way they want to manipulate you. I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I'm being very factual. You know?
Well, when we find out about the NSA and what they're doing, and we find out about things that they're printing like this, you know, the other thing is with the phones, they can turn them on remotely for your GPS and for video as well.
What really disgusts me is that every spell of Common Core that I have been to, just like the other night, I mean, you know, you guys are sitting there, and I've got a notebook in front of me, and I'm sitting there listening to her, and I'm writing everything that I know to be factual about Common Core, and I'm just sitting there, and I want to get up, and I want to say something so bad, but it was like, nope, I know we got a meeting coming, especially about the devices and the things like that, and
the biggest thing is that most people truly believe that education is a sacred thing and that it's going to be taken care of. And it's very hard to wake enough people up to get them motivated to make sure that their children are taken care of. And then you also have folks who don't have children in school who think, well, there's nothing else I can do. This is the direction things are going. And, you know,
Or they're tired of hearing about it.
They're tired of hearing about it. But,
No,
you know,
because I'm in school, but I have grandchildren.
well, we need their
And I
help.
have a daughter who's a teacher.
Well, we need their help to be able to move things forward as well. It's really about getting the word out to enough people.
And do we want to keep local school boards?
Well, absolutely. I mean, this technically doesn't. If we have no local control, what's the point in having a school
From
board?
the bottom up.
You know, and it's the same thing with teachers. If teachers have no control over what they do in the classroom, they're not going to stay in that profession. They want to teach kids. That's what they went to school for.
Well, I can tell you right now, they've got to find another job out of the out. Like that.
Many other teachers are going to be feeling the same way.
There are so many teachers.
I talked to a lot of teachers, and there's a lot of them that are very frustrated right now. This is not the career that they started. They don't have the toolbox they used to have.
They're not allowed to use it.
What's up?
They're not allowed to use it anymore.
Well, they're not. It's
Toolbox, the tried and true.
I didn't cover a lot of the details in some of the other curriculum. I don't know how much y'all want to know, but I do think that it's important that you see the trail back to achieve, and that you understand who Michael Cohen is, and that you understand his history in the U.S. Department of Education, and now he's getting funded from a private company who's developing these tests for the federal government. He has an allegiance to the people he's worked to in the past, and not to us. And I think it's important to understand that. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know how the curriculum is going to be changing to the honor students. You know, these kids strive all the to get to that point where they're in their high school graduation, they're all honors, they got good grades, they're looking for the higher. How is this going to change those honor students coming in?
At the high school level, they're going to have, teachers will have a little bit more flexibility, because the Common Core really is the core. Anything you can do above and beyond that's fine. If you're going to have flexibility, and one teacher who's an expert in one area in history, surely going to spend more time in the area they're interested in. So it allows for some of that flexibility. What I am going to tell you is, I think in the long run, what we're doing today does is it makes it to where we're going to have a lot less honor student. And here's why. The typical, what we're doing in most schools today in this country is we have 4 seats of children in elementary school. This isn't everywhere, but this is most of them. And you have one child on this side who's the bright one, you have one on this side who's the not so bright one, you have 2 that are middle. What happens is the bright child can't speak to the lowest one because they don't understand each other's language. But the middle ones understand both. So they put them in the middle, so the bright one helps the middle one helps the low one. The brightest child in that group can never meet their potential because they're so busy helping everybody else. And I'm afraid that that's the direction we're truly headed, is rather than giving that one brightest child every opportunity they can to be the brilliance of this country, we're losing it.
Okay.
That's where we're headed in the long run.
North Elementary posted on their Facebook page this last week that they were going to study the Kagan. I would like to know more about that.
Kagan is just a way of teaching that involves collaboration,
Group thinking.
One specific example would be you have a group of 4 students once again. One is, and they're going to produce a video on living and non-living things. One person would be the writer. One person would be the researcher. Each would have their own job, and they come together for a common project. Another thing would be that in Kagan, studies have shown that kids sit in their desk all day long. They don't have as much oxygen in their brain. So it's a lot of up and down, moving around, going and sharing. Okay, this is what our group has decided. Now I'm going to go share with your group what we decided. But we get out and move. So there's a lot of moving on, talking.
And I'm not telling you that all group work's bad. We have to learn how to deal with each other in life. We do. We have to learn how to deal with each other in life. We have jobs that we have to have discussions with people, and we don't always have the same point of view. So that's not the bad thing. The bad thing is when we're taking the opportunity from a child who could be the next brightest and brilliant child, and we don't allow them to live to their potential. To me, that's shameful.
No, I would say I agree with you. It seems like they're just going to make it a cookie cutter type of education, in and out, get them ready for even just careers, not even college, just get them out, and some are going to obviously struggle because you're going to have the high that have to now become, the average. They're taking their individuality.
Well, and what the testing does is we get rewarded if the high kid just kind of performs, higher than everybody else and really bring that low kid up. That's how testing's set up, is that everybody performs at a higher level. And that's the reason it's set up that way. It's all set up to try and bring that lowest kid up so everybody has the gains. And in certain school districts, when you have a higher socioeconomic status, you can get away with that a little bit easier. But when you're in a condition where we are, we have pretty low socioeconomic status, and it's hard for those kids to get where they ought to be. We spend a lot of time with them. Our teachers do an incredible job with the kids that we have. But we're at a disadvantage compared to a lot of these bigger districts.
How is our local schools going to help the special needs children? Because I'd rather there's no special testing for them.
I honestly, with the part, I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't. The special needs children, the funding is still there. So I imagine, you know, and they do exclude certain students from certain tests, and I don't know all the rules with that. You know, I really do have to refer to.
So if a child is blind and deaf and not able to work a computer, they're not, it's not.
A teacher of an ESE student or a special needs student, a teacher, like I have this year, I could go in and say, okay, these certain students, when they go to 5th grade next year, no, they need to take a paper test.
And that's on their plan. They have a progression plan, and that's all on their plan.
I've just been so worried about that. My nephew had 4 teachers last year in Texas, and
No, they have a pupil progression plan, and everything is in there that allows them, you know, basically states what they can use in order to, you know, as tools that another student might not have the ability to use. So for special needs, there's a whole different set of rules with them.
okay.
But, you know, Joe, I just want to say, that happens on a limited basis. I've been a special ed teacher for 7 years. And the reality is, you're teaching that student below grade level all year long, and then they're taking the grade level test, and there is no exceptions for that. You know, when they do the paper and pencil test that she mentioned, that is so low, it is embarrassing for the child to even take it. Have you actually?
Yeah, I gave paper and pencil this year. It's the same test.
Okay,
They read
well,
on the computer.
Okay, well,
Same
what I-
thing, because I just was, a certain child was able to read the math test to them.
Okay, the one I was referring to is a big, huge sheet of paper that shows up, and you turn the pages, and the child says, which one of these would you use to write with? And there's a pencil on there, there's a caterpillar, and there's a door. And they don't even have to talk to you, they just point.
No, I know the level of students that you're talking about. I understand.
But in reality, most of the time, the student doesn't get the help that the parents think they're actually really getting.
Well, most of them don't get enough help, honestly. I mean, realistically, and that's true for any special needs child. We don't have enough employees in the district to honestly do justice for what should happen. I mean, that's the reality. So I don't know what level, you know, that your child does anything else, but the more active that you are, the better the chance they're going to get the service they need too.
Right.
It's the parents that aren't as active that usually don't get the same level of service.
So can I ask you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, point of information, this year, because my church does a luncheon for the new teachers, there are 40 new teachers coming. 10 of those will be in the high school. That's a lot of teachers that are brand new to Okeechobee.
And we cut 22 positions this year, so that lets you know we're 62 retirees roughly.
Joe, can I ask you a question? I'm not in the teaching profession, although many of my family members are. Is it a fair assumption to assume that in a classroom, the class can only move as fast as the slowest student? Is that a fair assumption?
That's a fair assumption, but I think it depends on the teacher. Because there are teachers that will call that child in after school, you know, if that's an ability. I know when I taught chemistry, I had kids that were always behind everybody else. I'd come in before school, after school, but I would keep the pace to make sure I got everything covered that I could get covered. And the other thing that you can do is you don't have to, you can give the students on the high end different worksheets. You know, you can actually modify it to where they're going to be challenged rather than just doing what everybody else is doing. And it's the same thing if it's conceptual. Sometimes you'll give the lower students something a little bit lower. Yes, it takes more time to teach her, but you get to know those things. You get to know your students. But you always have to challenge the kids that need to be challenged.
There's a reason why I asked that, if I can follow up. In Palm Beach County, you know, where I went to school, we had a situation, as well as all the coastal, the Gulf coastal schools, where you have an influx, a high influx of ESOL students, English speakers of other languages. That what happened was when you bring those kids into a class that really speak, if any, English, and put them mainstream them into the classroom, they're either lost or you're holding the other students back. What I suggested that could be done, because schools are one of the most underutilized structures that we have in government, is to bring teachers in that are bilingual and let those kids come into the system like from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock to get them up to speed in basic English before you mainstream them into the classroom. So that way you're not dragging the whole class down trying to bring these kids up that don't speak more English. That would make sense to me. You know?
It does make sense. English as a second language is always a challenge. Having students move in the middle of the school year from somewhere else is always a challenge. teachers face challenges and they work with what they have, and it's something that I've always said is in business, if you get a semi-load of bad apples, send them back. In schools, you gotta hug them and love them and teach them anyway. And, it's the biggest issue with all of it really comes down to funding and accountability. And the time of the day with some of those things. I mean, Arnie Duncan, the current person who's in charge of the Department of Education at the federal level, if it was up to him, we would be in school 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months a year. And that's a quote from his mouth. And I think that our children are still kids at the same time. And so we have to have a balance of education and home life and honestly playtime. They're still kids. And I think that we're getting away from that. We're putting so much accountability on these kids. They're not ready for it. They're still kids. And we treat them like they're adults.